YouTube. Today in the Naughty Librarian, I am doing the social distance book tag. In case you are not aware, my wonderful friend Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany has created a whole virtual book festival because she is an incredible person and amazing at all things. But she has invented the Social Distance Book Festival. It is going on April 25th, and me, your girl, the Naughty Librarian, I am hosting a panel at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. My panel is tackling consent, gender, and toxic masculinity in romance. And I'm going to be talking to Miranda Dickinson, Julie Cohen, Zoe Castile, Priscilla Oliveras, and JD Evans. So I'm going to have 5 different authors right here, this channel, live streaming 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on April 25th, which is this Saturday. I am so excited. I hope all of you guys can come and chat with us and watch the live show. It's going to be a really, really cool panel. We're going to talk about smutty delights and all kinds of cool stuff. So I'm really excited for it. I hope you guys all can tune in and watch it with us. But in the meantime, Bethany also created a book tag all about the Social Distance Book Fest. So I figured, hey, let's do this book tag. Let's get some hype going. Let's promote my live show at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on April 25th, this Saturday. So yeah, let's get into this book tag. Let's talk about all the really, really cool panels that are going to be going on a lot of different channels about a lot of different topics. This kind of goes over some of it. And of course, I'm going to leave links to the social media for the Social Distance Book Fest in the description down below, so you can check out all of the information on it and all the different panels, because it's probably going to be something you're going to want to tune into. And why, yes, I did write down the questions and highlight my answers on a piece of paper. I realized I didn't have to do that, but I have the time since we're quarantined, and I got to play with highlighters, so I did it. Question 1. World building in speculative fiction and historical suspense. Share a book with great world building. I went with A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I feel like this might be a little bit of an obvious answer, but basically it is alternate dimensions of London. So there's 4 different Londons she had to create, and each London is vastly different than the last. And so it's not just one world that was created, it was 4 different worlds. So that's a lot of world building, and it's kind of epic fantasy, and everything is like very distinct, and there's not a lot of bleed over, so it's really, really cool. And I think a lot of my audience have probably already read this book, but if you haven't, I do recommend highly. It is very good. It's epic fantasy, alternate dimensions of London, and traveling in between dimensions, and it's really good. I definitely recommend. Question 2 is actually my panel, which is tackling consent, gender, and toxic masculinity in romance. So share a book that features enthusiastic consent. I have a lot of books to choose from because personally, when I see enthusiastic consent in a romance, it automatically goes up to one of my favorites. That is, you know, the saying is consent is sexy for a reason. So, I don't know, I could pick so many. So, I decided to pick one that's maybe less known, give a shout out to a book maybe not everyone's read yet, so I can recommend something new. And so I went with Man Candy by Jessica Lemon. I read this a really long time ago, but it's kind of really fun. It's kind of like a one night stand turns into more because they get snowed in a remote cabin. So it's just like, they got nothing else to do. And it's really good. I really, really enjoyed this whole series. I forget what the series is called right now, but there's a couple books before it, and it's very enthusiastic consent, because a lot of the sex scenes, they kind of turned consent almost into like a kink in a way, which was like interesting, because you just like, you need to say yes, because he like gets turned on by the word yes. Anyway, very enthusiastic. So I'm going to recommend Man Candy by Jessica Lemon. It's a book I don't think maybe everyone's read, so I wanted to, you know, promote something different, something new. I think it's on Kindle for maybe a couple bucks, so I recommend trying it out. Number 3 is, so you want to start a booktube channel, offer one piece of advice for aspiring booktubers. I'm going to share with you the story of the best piece of advice I was ever given in the worst way possible. Back when I was in college and I was trying to be an actress, I had an acting teacher who just hated me. I mean, she was a grown adult and I was in my early 20s and probably obnoxious, but she still was a grown adult, so it's like... But anyway, she just hated me. And I was gonna audition for this play, and I was like, oh good, she has nothing to do with this play. She's not gonna be there. Lo and behold, I walk into my audition, and Sure as shit, she's sitting there in the audience with the director of the play, and I was like, God damn it. I'm not gonna get cast now, but I still have to audition. And I'm doing my monologue, and she stops me in the middle of it. She goes, okay, you know what, stop. You know what, I'm not gonna listen to you unless you make me, so just do what you want. I know, what a bitch, right? Like, what do you do after that? And so I finished my monologue, and I remember I got really mad, and I literally just walked up to her in the audience and started doing my monologue directly into her face. I still didn't get the part, by the way, but the one thing I learned from that awful experience is that no one will listen to you unless you make them. And that's like, I learned it in the most horrible way, but it's honestly one of the best pieces of advice I ever received in my entire life. And I apply it to so many different things in my life, and even into booktube. But if you want to have a channel and you want people to listen to you, want people to see your reviews of books, you have to make them want to see you. And they're not going to ever see you unless you actually make a booktube channel and do it, and talk about it, and tell people, hey, I do book reviews, here's my channel. No one's going to promote you but you, and no one's going to listen unless you make them. So that's my one piece of advice, and I apply it to pretty much everything I do in life, even though it was a horribly given learning experience, but it's my favorite piece of advice I've ever been given. Question 4. From boys in outer space to magical girls in guillotines, queer voices in science fiction and fantasy. Share your favorite sci-fi or fantasy book with queer representation. Obviously, I was gonna go with Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir because it is a sci-fi fantasy hybrid that features queer characters. It is the perfect book for this answer. It is basically lesbian necromancers in space. I don't think I need to say more about it than that because that already sounds awesome. It's necromancy, so they have like death magics, and they're also on spaceships and doing stuff in space. And also Gideon, the lead character in this, is a female who very much likes other ladies. She's kind of a flirt. And it has everything this question required. I love it. I also really recommend. I really enjoyed this book. It's very snarky, sarcastic, funny. I recommend it. I really like it. Question 5. Beyond Stephen King, New Frontiers in Horror. Share a creepy book written by a woman, a person of color, or someone from the LGBTQIA+ community. Okay, go with me on this one. I picked The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, because this author is a woman and a woman of color, and also this book does feature LGBTQ relationships, and in interesting ways. It's like different type of like polyamorous relationships are explored in this, for example, so there's a lot of different representation. I'm not sure of the author's own sexuality, because it doesn't matter to me what their sexuality is. But I know she is a woman and a woman of color. As for creepiness, I found this book very creepy because it's very disturbing at points because it's supposed to be. It is dystopian, it's sci-fi in the future, okay, you know what, this is such an epic book that I can't describe the plot and have it make any sense to you without spoilers, but just know it's like a masterpiece, I would say. If you do like dystopian, if you like sci-fi, if you like maybe a dash of magic, you're definitely gonna really want to read this one. It's like a masterpiece. It's masterfully written, if I could say words correctly. It is very intricate, and at times I was very confused, but then I started figuring it out, and honestly, it was really good. So I do recommend this one, and a lot of content that happens in the book is disturbing and creepy. So I'm thinking it counts for this one. I would say it could fit into the horror category without stretching too much. Number 6. Fierce Femmes. Standing your ground. Share a book with a fierce female protagonist. This is another question where there are literally so many books to choose from because there's so many really dope female protagonists. But in this case, I went with one that's maybe unexpected. I went with Melanth from Dark Sky by Kresley Cole. And Melanth was a character we were introduced to several books ago with different stories. It's a kind of an episodic paranormal romance series. And Melanth was always my favorite character. So when she got her own book, like, I was in. I love Melanth so much. She's very badass, but kind of understated in her badassery. She's a little insecure, but she's also really a badass sorceress. She has like the ability of compulsion, essentially. So she could say like, I want you to walk off this building. And then the person will just walk off the building because she can control their thoughts like that. So she is not one to be fucked with. And also, I like that she's very vulnerable, and she has this sense to her where she's very loving still, and it makes her insecure because she has those emotions, and they kind of get shit on in her reality. So I don't know, I always really liked Melanth. And also, hey, this is a heroine in a romance that's a bit of a light skirt. You don't always get those, and sometimes you need them because not every woman in the world is a pure virginal sacrifice. Okay, like there's women who've been around, and that's why I like Melanth a lot. She's really dope. So I recommend this series altogether. It is pretty much episodic. You could read the books out of order, and I don't think it would make too much of a difference. There are some storylines that have happened in previous books that influence books later in the series, so I feel like it's a richer experience to start at the beginning and move forward, but you could read it out of order and be fine. So if you just want to pick up Dark Sky and read about Melanth in particular, like, I think you'd enjoy it. Number 7, navigating Latinx identity in fantasy. Share a fantasy book with Latinx representation. I went with Labyrinth Lost by Zoraida Cordova. This is the Brooklyn Brujas series, and we're following 3 sisters in particular, and they are all coming of age as brujas, so they, practice brujeria, which is like Latin witchcraft, so there's a lot of magical spells in this. And it's also, it's deeply seated in Latin culture because brujeria doesn't really exist outside of Latin culture. So I definitely recommend it. It has like a definite Latin feel to it, and it also has really cool witchcraft and magic and fantasy elements. So I really like this one. You know what? And there's 2 other books in the series, and so far so good. I've really been enjoying this series. I think it's really good. Number 8, family, friendship, and determination in middle grade fiction. Share a middle grade book with a great family or friend group. Since it's middle grade, I went with the Percy Jackson series. In particular, this is the Heroes of Olympus series, which is like the 2nd story arc. And I just picked a book at random from it. But I picked this 2nd story arc more than the 1st story arc because in this one, there's a lot more emphasis put on non-traditional families. And I really liked seeing that written about in middle grade fiction, so kids can see other families exist and are valid. Like, this person has 2 moms, or that person has 2 dads, or this person only has a dad or only has a mom. Like, there's a lot of different ways families exist, and I liked that Rick Riordan actually took a stand and wrote them into his books, kind of casually, didn't make a big deal out of it, but just kind of casually put in alternative families, and I think that should just exist in books. I just really appreciated that all different types of families were represented in this, and I think it was a bold choice to make in middle grade fiction because you have lots of angry mommy groups out there that would complain, but he did it anyway. So props to Rick Riordan. I appreciated this series just for representation value. Number 9, new voices in YA panels, SFF and contemporary. Share an upcoming release that you can't wait to get your hands on. This was actually a really hard question because there's so many releases that like I really want to get my hands on. So I just picked the book coming out the soonest to now that I've already pre-ordered because I feel like that's a fair choice because it's hard picking one over another. So I went with House of Dragons by Jessica Cluse. I really liked Jessica Cluse's other series that she wrote. The Kingdom on Fire series, I love that series intensely. I highly recommend it. And this one is like, it's been described as the Breakfast Club meets dragons, and I was like, you sold me. Yes. So I've been really excited for this one for so long, and I've pre-ordered it. I pre-ordered it like 6 months ago, and it's coming out May 7th, I believe, so it's so soon. I'm gonna get it. It's gonna be in my little fingers, and I'm gonna read it, and I'm so excited. Yay, House of Dragons. Number 10, from Sherlock Holmes to Veronica Mars, variations in the mystery thriller genre. Share a favorite mystery or thriller. I decided to pick The Darkest Corners by Kara Thomas. It is a genuine gasp out loud thriller for me because like, oh my gosh, like, okay, here's the thing with Kara Thomas. I've read 3 books by her. They are technically YA, but they really don't read as YA. I think they're great crossover novels. I feel adults would also really enjoy them because they feel like the characters are like teenagers, but these are written for adults. Like, let's be real. I literally could never guess her killers. 3 books haven't guessed the killer. 3 of them. Oh my goodness gracious, she's got me 3 times. And that's saying something. I'm really good at guessing the killer. Like, really good at it. She has stumped me 3 times in a row. And honestly, the ending of this, literally, like, it blew my mind. Giant gasp. Oh my gosh. Blackout. Crazy. It's such like oh my gosh, it's like a mind blow ending. Like, you think the twist was done. It's not done, I'll tell you that. So, I really enjoy Kara Thomas books. I think they're very, very good. I think they're good for adults, even though they're technically YA. We're using the term YA loosely here, but they're very good. They're murder mysteries, and ooh, Darkest Corners. Ooh, it got me. I don't want to say anything about the plot. It's just, it's a good murder mystery, and there's a twist, and then it keeps going. Very good. I like it. It's a very good thriller for me. Number 11, Identity, Formation, and Deconstruction in Adult Fiction. Share a book that deals with identity in a positive or negative way. This is a really hard one to answer for me because there are so many books that deal with identity, because that's kind of all books when you think about it. But this is one in particular I thought was making a interesting point about the psyche. Oh, with Bird Box by Josh Malerman. Now hear me out. When I read this, the point of the book I kind of picked up on was that, what are you actually scared of in the apocalypse? Are you scared of the monsters, or are you scared of the person you have become in the apocalypse? Because this is a whole new invention. The old you is now dead. You do not exist anymore. You are a new person. So it's kind of finding yourself in, like, what is actually fear, and what is the bigger issue here? Is it the monster or is it you? So I feel like that's something, that's like a deep dive into identity and your own personal psyche. There's a really interesting rabbit hole to go down. And that's kind of why I really like the book. It's saying some interesting, like, you know, philosophical ideas here. And also there's creepy monsters and violence, and it's like crazy. Oh my gosh, it's demented and I love it. It was so intense. It's a good scary book. I'm not going to say it's not scary. Like, this is an intense book, so if you're sensitive to scary things, I would recommend caution. But if you like scary things, like, this is legit tense and very scary. So I recommend it. And number 12, Social Distance Book Fest. Share a bright spot from the past few weeks. A book you read, a moment of self-care, or something that made you laugh, etc., etc. That's something that made you happy. So for me in this quarantine, I've just been trying to keep busy. So I set up chores to do around the house, like all the little things I need to do around the house that I haven't been doing. I set them up so I have, like, this day I'm doing this and this day I'm doing that, so I don't, like, overwhelm myself and get burnt out. But the other thing I've been doing religiously is watching ghost hunter shows. I can't stop. I've watched so many. Like, I think the Travel Channel is entirely ghost shows. Like, all of their shows are about ghosts. And, like, to varying degrees of success, there's some that are better than others. I kind of like the Dead Files, personally. There's this psychic lady who, like, swears a lot, and so she's kind of cool. And then there's this retired NYPD homicide detective, and he's trying to be, like, the hard ass, and, like, he goes around, he's like, hey, you're 16, like, you're old enough to be smoking stuff. Are you seeing things? Are you hallucinating, or is it ghosts? Like, he gets in their face about stuff, and I love it so much. Every show is exactly the same format, so it's kind of comforting that you're not going to be, like, horribly surprised. And also it's, like, history lessons about different locations and, like, why things happened where, so it's a little true crime, and also, you know, ghosts and stuff. And, of course, there's the OG Ghost Adventures, but, like, oh my gosh. Like, those guys are such D-bags. Like, they are. Like, I'm going to insert a picture right here. Like, tell me they're not a Canadian rock band from the early 2000s. You can't, because that's what they look like. And they always try to pick fights with ghosts. I'm like, why are you trying to bro out with your ghosts? I don't get it. But anyway, I've watched an intense amount of ghost shows. But those are the two that I can pay attention to the most. I've tried a bunch of them, but to varying degrees of success. Some of them are quite bad. These ones are also bad, but kind of so bad they're good. So yeah, I've just ghost shows and also RuPaul's Drag Race. I've just been watching a lot of TV. Alright, so that ends this tag. Basically the questions are all different types of panels that are going to be going on that day. Some of them are hosted by some of my friends as well. Again, information down below for the social media for the Social Distance Book Fest will be in my blurb. Check that out so you can get like a full rundown of all of the panels. And again, hey, reminder, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Saturday, April 25th, this coming Saturday, live on my channel. We're going to be doing my panel, which is Tackling Consent, Gender, and Toxic Masculinity in Romance. I'm going to have a bunch of romance authors here, and we're going to have a nice, fun conversation. I would love it if you guys could join in, chat with us, be there for the live show. It's going to be really fun, so I hope everyone can come and like hang out with us. Let me know in the comments down below, are you going to be watching any panels for the Social Distance Book Fest? And are you going to be watching my panel? Let me know in the comments down below what you are most excited for. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. And if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye!